What's up guys? In today's video, we'll be looking into the newly released TD game, Tower Adventure. This is actually one of the most unique TD games I've played in Roblox, as it has features like enemies attacking your towers, being able to reposition your towers, bosses that attack the player, and much more. We will dive into the tutorial for a more in-depth guide. So first off, it starts us by introducing our first tower, the Archer, which has a little cute illustration that explains the tutorial for us. She teaches us the basic features of the game, like enemies attacking towers, being able to move towers, attacks that can harm the player, certain enemies having specific resistance types, like here for example. The rock slime has 50% resistance to physical, while this arcane slime has resistance against magic. It also shows us this unique ability that endgame towers have, which are called endgame abilities. With the tutorial finished, let's move on to the first difficulty, Trial. Since this is basically the easy mode, it starts off pretty simple. The game sends out basic enemies like slimes, goblins, and other low tier mobs. But then it introduces something interesting, a goblin that throws boulders at your towers. In this game, towers actually have HP, so if a tower takes too much damage, it gets knocked down and becomes useless, until it heals back up passively, or it gets healed by a healer tower. That's honestly a pretty cool mechanic, because now you just don't have to worry about enemies reaching the end, you also have to protect your towers. Later on, the game also starts a slime rain event, where slimes fall from the sky and attack your towers. It's simple, but it makes the match feel a lot more active. Kind of reminds me of Terraria. After that, the rest of the waves are most likely what you'd expect from easy difficulty. Basic enemies, nothing too crazy, and pretty manageable overall. Then we reach the boss, King Slime. At first, King Slime is pretty easy. It doesn't have any insane attacks, and it mostly just acts like a bigger version of a normal slime. But once you defeat it, it enters a second phase. It generates its HP and starts moving faster, which makes the ending a little more intense. Overall, trial difficulty is simple, beginner friendly, and a nice way to introduce the game's mechanics. Let's move on to the second difficulty, Clash. At first, it starts pretty simple, sending out the usual slimes and goblins. But then, the game introduces a new enemy, the Goblin Cannon. This thing is annoying, because it can either blast your towers for heavy damage, or launch a goblin farther down the path. It honestly reminds me of the Gargantuan from Plants vs. Zombies, which is pretty cool. Then we get introduced to the first flying enemy, the Goblin ship. Only towers with flight detection can attack it, and once it gets destroyed, it drops 4 goblins that immediately start running down the path. On wave 20, the game sends out the mini-boss, the Goblin Engineer. He moves slowly, but he has a lot of annoying abilities. He can throw time bombs at your towers, summon reinforcements like goblin cannons and goblin ships, and even place little turrets that randomly attack your towers. For a new player, this mini-boss can definitely catch you off guard, but once you defeat him, he drops materials that can be used to unlock or upgrade towers, which makes the fight worth it. And finally, we reach the Clash boss, the Night Goblin. This boss introduces a really cool mechanic where it actually targets the player to lower your base HP. So now, you're not just defending the path, you also have to dodge attacks while making sure you're not accidentally leading them into your own towers. In its second phase, it throws its sword at a random tower for massive damage, then starts using its shield as a weapon. Overall, Clash isn't insanely hard, but it's a big step up from the trial and can definitely punish new players who aren't ready. Now, let's move on to the final difficulty, Ember. And finally, we move on to the last difficulty, Ember. Unlike Trial and Clash, Ember doesn't start with the usual slimes and goblins. Instead, it sends out flower type enemies that leave flowers behind, which shaders can turn into hosties. It also introduces bomber enemies that explode once they drop to half HP, so you really have to be careful with your tower placement. Then we get to the Shadow, an enemy that spawns behind random towers and starts attacking them. It's not exactly the biggest threat, but it is definitely annoying if you ignore it. After that, the game brings back flying enemies, so having flight detection is still important early on. On wave 16, the first Ember mini-boss appears, Elderbeard. He moves slowly, but he has some pretty dangerous abilities. He can heal nearby enemies, root your towers with a ground attack, and spawn tree stumps on the path that release smaller tree enemies. Later on, Ember starts spawning relic enemies, and these are where things get rough. The relic stone enemies have high resistance and throw massive boulders at your towers. One of them literally wiped out 3 of my farmers. There's also a relic drone that becomes highly resistant if the player stands too close, so the best strategy is to stay away from the path when it appears. Then on wave 24, the second mini boss spawns, the relic slime. It's basically a stronger version of King Slime, but with a shockwave attack that damages ground towers and the player if you don't time your jump properly. It can also spawn a relic drone on the player, and if you don't destroy it fast enough, it starts damaging your base HP and slow you down. After surviving all that, we finally reach the final boss, the Dread. At first, she uses a fireball rain and fast phantom dashes that you need to dodge. It's not too complicated, but one mistake can still cost you a lot of base HP. But after you defeat her, that's when the real fight begins. Dragon Phase has multiple attacks you need to avoid, like raining fireballs, a Sunstrike attack that follows the player, a massive slam from the sky, and a dash attack that breathes fire across the path. Once a dragon is finally defeated, it gets captured by the witch dust from the tutorial, and that's the end of Ember difficulty. Overall, I think that Tower Adventure is a really fun and unique game. It's definitely more niche compared to other tower defense games, but the tower HP system, boss attacks, player dodging, and enemy mechanics make it feel different. The game still has room to grow, but for a newly released tower defense game, I honestly think it has great potential. I had a lot of fun playing it, and I'm excited to see what the future updates add. That's all. Thank you for watching my video.